Welcome to the Teachbigger podcast. I'm Chris Pratt. I'm here with Chris Mosley and Tyler Lamont. Hey guys, how's it going?
Hello.
Hello.
Well, here we are again. So,
One more time.
yeah, how's your virtual classes going? How's life? How's everything? Groundhog's Day. We're doing it again.
The virtual class is the same, same thing, different tab.
Well,
Same thing, different tab.
I was really kind of thinking about that, about how you kind of have the same thing every day, and I really think that goes down to poor planning.
Yeah, you gotta change it up. You gotta individualize
think
each
about
student.
it. Yeah, I mean, Tyler's right. If you're doing the same thing every day, you're the one that's leading the class. So,
Well, I think less is more.
Well, one of the things we like to try to do on the Teach Bigger podcast is challenge teachers and each other to try new things, think out of the box. That's why the little box is open, so that way there you go.
Well, I think they can't get better unless they learn the same thing every day.
There you go.
That's my thought behind it.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we were talking the other day. So, Mr. Lamont, Tyler, whatever. What are some of the differences? Because you teach junior high and high school, but you teach junior high online. I don't have that experience right now, right? So, like between online and virtual, what are some of the differences you see with the kids?
Do you mean between online
or do you
and
see
class?
differences?
Well, the biggest difference is that my junior high students ghost me way harder than my high school students do. I don't know. I don't know why they do that, but they
ghosting
definitely,
hard right
yeah, they ghost me pretty hard. It's hard to get those junior high students to attend those meets.
Now, can we stop for a second, and would you mind explaining to our listeners what ghosting is, just in case they don't know?
Yeah, I was wondering about that.
Ghosting.
Not dying and coming back and haunt you, but tell me.
No, I can't believe I'm defining this. Ghosting is where you disappear. So like you're talking to somebody and then they just kind of fall off the face of the earth, and it's like they turned into a ghost.
Mm-hmm.
Got you.
So are they still connected on the line and you just have no interaction with them, or is it that they just log off?
No, they don't show up at all is what he's saying.
On the line? You mean like the internet?
Yeah, like on the line. Yeah, the internet.
There's not actually a line there, Pratt.
On the World Wide Web, like zeros and ones.
No one.
He's still using dial-up. No, so what he's saying by that is they're not showing up at all and they're not communicating.
Yes,
Is
yeah.
that correct?
And then I get these excuses of like, oh, I didn't know. And I'm like, oh, you didn't get all my calendar invites, all my emails, all my remind text messages?
I didn't get it.
You didn't get it. Oh, okay. Well, then it must have been Google's fault. Well, since Google's a multi-billion-dollar industry, our company, I'm gonna assume that they didn't mess up.
So what else besides them ghosting you?
It's definitely way harder to tell how they feel about my lesson because I can't see them because their cameras are off.
Or if they're even there.
Or if they're even there. Or my favorite one is when they're like driving in their car and they forget to mute. So it's very clear that they're driving in their car because you're.
That's exciting. What's the behavior like?
Actually,
First of all, I know the behavior's changed, but was it already bad before we went to virtual, or was it a total change?
No, well, the behavior before we went to virtual was, I mean, they're middle school kids. I mean, they're as good as they could have been. I mean, they weren't disrespectful or anything, and I worked really, really hard with them to get to that point. The behavior in terms of like when we went to virtual, there isn't really any behavior because they're not. I mean, they're engaged and they're doing things, but they're not. My classes are so small that no one's really acting out, I guess I should say. And I guess I'm one of the lucky few. But and that's at the middle school level. But at my high school level, there's always at least one kid who always wants to unmute themselves to chime in when I'm in the middle of talking.
Right. Yeah,
Always.
I experienced that also. I'm like, yeah, don't unmute yourself. Thank you. They want to say something, and usually that's the kid that isn't like his his or her cameras off.
Hmm.
So they just want to be heard or something like that. Um, so is that the biggest difference that you've seen so far?
Yeah, I think so. The biggest thing is the ghosting, and then I think the next biggest thing is when to like know when to mute and when to not mute.
Yeah. So like high school, I think that's the issue too. Like ghosting, I guess. And we've like communicated all types of ways. Like some of them, they say, "Oh, I overslept." Oh, really? Because it's like 1 o'clock now, and we normally have 6 a.m. rehearsal, so your body can't wake up at 12, or your body can't wake up at 1:11.
Right.
You know. So yeah, those kids. Uh,
I had a kid. Uh, he obviously just woke up, and I said, like, hey, why don't you chime in and talk to tell us something good? That's what's going on. And this kid is just talking away, but he's muted,
mhm.
and but his camera's on, and you could see him. He's like he's struggling to get out of bed. His hair's all messed up, whatever. And I'm like, hey, little Jimmy, you're you're muted. And he goes, what? And I was like, and your camera's on. And he like looks, and he meant to unmute himself and like turn off the camera, but he like
Oh, but the
flipped
camera was
it.
on.
Yeah, he turned it on. So he's over there talking away, and like you could very clearly tell that he's like getting out of bed, like trying to like walk into the bathroom. Like,
Oh, well, that's exciting. We so when we first got on, this the biggest difference I've seen is just like the whole like option option to show face. Um, and I know most of the kids can like,
mm-hmm.
and so at the beginning, I just kind of said, and I have a really good relationship with the kids, like really good, where I kind of tell them like it is, and they know. So I said, "Hello." Like the first class, I didn't say anything because we were just all getting used to it. And the second one, I'm like, "Hello, students." I said, "If you have the capability to show your face in your video, which I know most of you do, please make sure you do that because we want this to feel as much as close to classroom as possible. And if not, I'll start disconnecting you from the call." And then their faces started to pop up. And then, I mean, it's not like they were laying down, like they were fine. They were just being weird about it. But like, and then after that, then they're showing their faces and stuff. I think it took them a second to get used to that.
Mm-hmm.
The behavior is pretty much still the same. Like, I mean, they'll have like, I like my classroom, like, not militaristic, but I mean, it needs to be a certain like still quiet,
Mm-hmm.
looking at me, boom. But like, I mean, they'll do something, they'll come back, but as active as they can be, being in their room or the kitchen or whatever. That's the biggest difference. It's not 100% like still and quiet and looking, because they're whatever, but they're still pretty engaged to get information and stuff like that. Because I'll call on people.
It's almost
I think probably in the other classrooms they don't do that.
Well, it's almost like my behavior in my virtual room is even better because honestly, I
You
don't
can
think
mute
I've had
everybody.
I don't think I've had to deal with one form of disrespect at all since virtual learning because they're either not there
Yeah,
or they're muted. So they're probably cursing me out hardcore, but
probably.
I can't see them and I can't hear them.
Yeah.
Teachers for years have always said, if only I had a mute button, and now you finally
And
have
now you
one.
have it. So you're just teaching your heart away, and you don't
Mm-hmm.
have to see. They're not paying attention, or you just see their name, you just assume. So
Yep.
it is what it is.
Mm.
But so that's the biggest difference. So there's certain like little traits I see from class to class of like the different types of kids, that they start having the same type of thing. But for the most part, they're doing as I guess the best as they can.
Hmm.
That's what I think.
Okay, so we were thinking tonight about discussing this. The other day we did an episode about the 10 different personalities that you see like in every virtual meeting, but we didn't
Oh yeah.
necessarily consider students. So we're going to kind of go back and revisit that idea today, and let's discuss maybe 10 different students that we see in every single virtual class. So
Okay.
the first one is the infamous kid with the camera off, right? So you always have at least one, if not more, and it's like
Always.
The whole class.
right.
Yeah.
So how do you interact with those kids, and how do you get them engaged?
As soon as they get in there, like what I do, it's kind of like calling the roll, like I come in, I'm like, hey Chris, and hey da da da, like I say things, I'm like, hey such and such, I can't see you, I hope I can see you pretty soon, like and then when I call their name, then it's like, oh, he sees me, he can tell my camera's not on, so and then I'm like, I go back to them, hey such and such, your camera's not on, I don't know if you're trying, and I try to make a big deal. I keep it really light, but they know that their camera's not on, and that's not what I want them to do. And then I kind of keep moving on. Now, there's kids that come on, and like every now and then they'll like cut it off for a second and then come back on, or they have like the screensaver come up or whatever. But the just having it off all the whole time, it usually doesn't happen. Or if it is off, they tell me, hey, I'm also doing this, but and those kids are like in the chat room, they'll answer and stuff like that. They show that they're active that way. But yeah, for the most part, that's what I see.
Okay.
Well, I tell them to
What about
turn on
you?
their cameras, and it'll last for maybe 10, 15 minutes, and then one by one, it's like lights just going out. Bloop,
It goes out.
bloop, bloop, bloop. Yeah, it just goes out. And then I'm sitting there, I'm like, and then I just feel like I'm just talking to myself. I'm like, I mean,
You
I
are.
know I knew
You're always
I
talking to you.
exactly. I'm like, I know I'm used to doing podcasts and stuff and like, recording my own voice because I like the way it sounds. But I mean, it'd be sure nice to know if anyone's getting this information.
Yeah, and I also tell them, I'm like, okay, on this side, it feels like I'm talking to myself. So what I need you to do is, if I say something that I need a affirmation, give me like a nod or like a thumbs up, or the little emoji thing that comes up and you get like whatever. I said, please give me that. Otherwise, it feels like I'm talking to myself, and I don't even know if I'm on mute. Does that make sense? And then they like the little emoji goes up or whatever. So even if like a kid coming in, they don't have their camera on or something like that for whatever reason, they'll have like the thumbs up and stuff like that. So, well, that's what I've noticed, and I think if you just kind of mention it, or the relationship you have with your kids, they'll get it.
Yeah.
Because they just try to just do the bare minimum. That's what kids do.
That's what people do.
Exactly.
All
So you push them.
So next.
So there you go. So I'm sure everyone under the sound of our voice has experienced that so far.
Right.
The hiding kid, hide and seek, peekaboo kid.
Peekaboo. So what about the kid with the virtual background? What kind of amazing backgrounds have you seen so far?
My face on like an elf's face. Like is it like the gnome or something like that? And then like it was my face. I had like the thing, and then they had like ears and stuff. So they did it on purpose. And then they're like going on the background and stuff. They're on the side. They're leaning back and forth until you see my face or whatever. And then I threaten the kid, and then it's usually fixed. But I do it in a joking way because it's funny. It is super funny.
Right. That is really funny.
And the kids see it too.
Have you seen anything weird, Lamont?
Yeah, I had a kid one time. He had this DJ thing going on, and it was like party going on behind him, and he was like had sunglasses on, and he was like doing like whatever's going on. And I'm over here trying to talk about music theory and like talking about whatever it is that we're trying to do. And then I look over in the sidebar, and it's like no face, no face, no face. Someone who's in bed, and then it's him. He's like,
That's funny.
Now, I've experienced not a screensaver, but we were not playing at the time. But one of my kids had the Bucky's Beaver and put it right in the middle, and like the kid sat there the whole time, and then I mean not the kid, the Beaver sat there the whole time, so the Beaver was in the camera. And this is one of my best kids, by the way. And like he's super on. He's probably my most engaged kid, right? So like every time I would say something, then you would see his thumb come on the screen and then go back off while I'm looking at the Bucky's Beaver. Uh, and then another one of our kids did like a whole thing, like a whole fake person, right? And they had like a hoodie on it, and they had a hat on it, and then it was just like sitting there. I forgot what they had like for the face or whatever. Um, and then it just sat there the whole time. It sat there the whole time, we know who it was. And then another time, a person signed on as like my last name, like Mrs. Moses. So like my mom had gotten the chat room or something.
That's awesome.
And then I'm about to remove you from the room, and I removed it. So it was one of the kids being silly,
Right.
but I'm like, oh, they're crazy.
That's good. Those are good. I like that.
It's funny. I laughed, and then I removed them from the room.
Right.
I
Not-
feel like there's way
Not
more
the
things
one
that
like
you
I
can
did
do.
the ones who had like the whole mannequin thing, and then the Bucky Beaver. I thought that was really funny because I know that kid. But the other ones, I whatever. So that you have to be lighthearted with it because it's it's kids being kids. It's another way for them to be silly.
Yeah.
Yeah, you go through Zoom, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. See, I feel like a lot of that stuff is easier to do with Zoom than it is to do with Google Meet, because like you kind of have to jump through some hoops to get a background for Google Meet.
Mm-hmm.
I was pretty
Oh,
impressed with
really?
that student because
No, it's pretty easy.
for Google Meet you have to go in and download some toolbox or something. I don't know. I looked into it one time and I was like, this looks like way more work than it's worth. But obviously he didn't think so.
Well, for Google
No,
Meet,
they have settings and stuff.
well, the easiest way to do it in Google Meet is just through Snap Camera. You can download that and then do it. So, just for all you teachers out there who might want to try that.
Thank you. They're writing it down right now.
Right. Snapcamera.com. Anyways, all right, so let's move on. So, what about the kids who, just like they do in regular class and they interrupt you, now they have access to a microphone and they just interrupt your lesson. They like to talk. So,
Yeah.
have you had that, and how do you deal with it?
This has been consistent. The same kid who is like trying to be the class clown is the same one who does that.
Mm-hmm.
And is the same kid that I have to threaten to almost be removed from the class. See, I can't give him the look. See, because we have a great relationship, and I give him the look, and he calms down.
Right.
But when I look here, I have to look like in the camera, I guess, and whatever. But so I have to threaten him, and say, and he's just he's a good kid, but he just likes to get reactions from people. So I have to say, hey, such and such, mute yourself. I'm going to remove you from the, it's actually two kids. One of my upper kids and like one of the other kids are like the younger ones. And the one, like the younger one, he didn't really do that. Like he didn't do that whenever we were in class. Like he wasn't a shouter outer. Now he does it. So it's weird. So anyway.
That is interesting.
Yes, I definitely have those, but it's only two out of all the kids that I have.
I only have one, but the way Google Meet works is that like if you mute somebody in Google Meet, then they're muted and they can't unmute themselves until I decide they're unmuted. So
I wish I could do that.
Yeah, like they speak out or something and I'm just like bloop, and then like I don't say anything. I don't make a big deal about it or anything like that. It's just like, oh, you're now muted and I control your fate now.
Yeah.
So those of you who aren't using
That's good.
Google Meet, there you go. So, okay. So what about this scenario? It's the kids, and this is kind of an interesting dynamic, but it's when you get no answer. It's like total silence. It's like dead on the other end. You ask a question, you're asking for interaction, and there's just nothing. right? So the kids have all, without talking, they've joined forces and decided we're not participating. So how do you deal
Right.
with it?
And so like for some of the kids that I've had, like I've like during this time I'm training leadership. So we're having a leadership discussion or whatever, and I have a question and I pose a question to the group and there's still nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And you're already talking to yourself, you know, So, I always do this. I'm like, I put my ear to the thing, and I try to make them laugh and I tap the screen. I'm like, is this thing on? Am I on mute? And then they'll laugh and then, they'll start to respond. But um, I usually try to say, hey, I don't want to call anybody because it's not as fun. So if you could just unmute yourself and answer, it would make it less awkward because I'm already talking to myself. So if, and they laugh,
Mm-hmm.
and so they join in. But it's definitely a lot of awkward silence. I'm like, unmute yourself or raise, like I used to have, like raise your hand, and then if I can see you, I can call you. But if not, just unmute yourself and just go.
Mm-hmm.
And they put themselves on mute back. Like as soon as they're done like talking, they'll go right back on mute.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, I think like my high school kids have definitely turned away from saying something in class. Because I'll be like, okay, now I want you guys to think about this, like, and like unmute yourself or put in the chat box, a time of blah 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 blah, and like ask them some type of question of some kind. And I always wait a good 15 seconds, and it's the longest 15 seconds of my life. And I'm just like, any day now, like what's going on? Like, I mean, anybody at all. And then it always happens. One person puts in the chat box, can you repeat the question? So I
and then
say
you
it
just
again.
take a breath, and then just repeat it once. You're
Yeah,
like,
I repeat it again. And then my like a lot of my high school students definitely want to, like, it's like they rather type it all out instead of say something. And I'm like,
I'm
that's
like, I'm not
weird.
reading that.
And there's a few times and they're like, oh, it was just too much to type, so I'd rather just say it. I hope that's okay. I'm like, yeah, I told you, like, this is an appropriate time to speak out, and I don't know why you think that. And then they'll say like two words, and I'm like, you literally just typed a book in the chat. Like, what's the difference? So
But I mean, I don't want to get all teachery on us or whatever, but if you think about it, that is really cool because you're giving kids choices in way they prefer to respond. Because some kids would prefer to speak, some kids would prefer to type it out, and so
You're
that's
getting
a,
all
well,
teachery on us.
I know, but
that's
that's a good
look. If
thing.
there's one person who's a teachery of a teacher, that's me. I'm probably the most teachery teacher that you've ever taught and teached.
Really?
Yep.
Can you prove it?
What?
Can you prove that? Like, do you have any way to back that up?
Well, it's the same way of how you prove somebody's smart. It's just subjective. It's kind of like the emotion love. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but yet everybody knows it's there, and somehow we all kind of understand it.
Gotcha.
What about that next kid? What type of kid is the next kid that we have?
All right, so the next kind of kid that you are gonna encounter is your straight up gaming kid, like that, like really they're not in your classroom, they're gaming right now. They just happen
Yeah.
to be gaming in your classroom.
They have the little headphones with the microphone on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I have those, and I kind of like as we started, I kind of just didn't mention to I try to just kind of ease into things,
Mm-hmm.
and then the more comfortable we're getting with the online stuff, I'm like, hey, take a break for 5 seconds from your video games,
Uh-huh.
and then like connecting what we're doing.
So you actually have students that are in your class, but they're playing games while you're teaching, or
Like when we usually whenever they get on, they have like games, like they'll have their stuff or whatever,
mm-hmm.
and then once we get started and I like make the announcements, then they'll
Okay.
because like at the beginning we were just having classes and they didn't have like something in their hands, like their instruments and stuff. So now it makes it a bit more difficult
Mm-hmm.
because there was one kid, like he was like, I guess the computer was far away, and he's like one of my favorite, my favorite kids, one of my best kids.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, he's like the whole time, and I would say his name, and then I said, "Hey, stop playing video games and listen." And then he would just stop, and then he would listen to everything I said, but he was still doing video games too.
Right.
But they're definitely in there.
Yeah.
But it's not as big as an issue as probably some other
Yeah.
people have, but
Well, I
you still
have
start to see.
where I can tell that a kid's on the phone. Like they're like definitely like texting or they're doing I don't know, maybe they're playing a video game, I don't know. But like their head is down and like sometimes I can even see their phone. And I'm like, "Man, like are you kidding me? Like you're literally on the computer. Like you already have a device. Like why do you got to be on like why do you got to do that?" And I'll say something and like sometimes they'll stop, but sometimes they won't and it's just I mean what am I gonna do? I don't think Google Meet has the ability to kick out a kid or to kick out somebody out of the meeting. Maybe it does, and I don't realize it.
I'm not sure.
Let's try it right
Kick them
now.
out.
Let's
Kick them
try it
out.
right now. Oh, look at that! I do. I have the power to remove you.
There you go.
Okay.
Good.
Well, we better watch out, students. I'm coming for you.
Okay, so
Coming for your
let's talk about
education.
this scenario with these kids. What about, and this would be more of our high school kids, but what about kids that join your class while they're at work? We don't really deal too
While
much
they're
with that
what?
while they're at work. Like we don't deal with that too much with teachers because this is their job. So do you see that a lot? The other day I had the opportunity to be on another teacher's class as an observer and just kind of being a mentor to them and helping them out. And there was a kid in there that was on a break at work at McDonald's and they're an essential worker working at McDonald's. And so they were
I mean, and
logging on.
I mean, I haven't experienced anyone. Okay, I have. They like took a break, We were not playing though. I mean, I had to do an interview with a couple kids, and a couple of them were at work. Today, I had a kid audition, and he seemed like he was like in a dungeon somewhere. like there were like pipes, and it seemed like he was in a warehouse. But yeah, one kid, I said, well, he was at Chick-fil-A working, and I said, well, please thank Chick-fil-A and tell them that we appreciate them letting you still continue your education. He's like, okay, so, and then we did an interview, and then he went back, but he didn't actually play.
Yeah.
So it was just maybe like two or three they've done that. But like if they're stopping that, and being responsible and coming take care of your class or checking in with you, I mean, who can be mad at them?
Right. Yeah. No. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I just, I appreciate them, and then, go back to work.
Well, I have one student in particular who he works at some automotive shop or like he changes oil or maybe it's a machine shop. It's something that deals with like machines and like motors and stuff. And every time he tries to get on, all you hear is just like constant going on in the background, like a big dually diesel engine or something that's just going on. And he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Lamont. I'm here at work. I'm listening." I'm like, "Well,
Are you really?
we're about to drum. I don't know if you're gonna be able to drum while changing oil, but as you can do your best." At least he logs on, like you said.
Yeah.
I mean, he's logging on, or at least attempting to.
Yeah.
That's all you can do.
All right, so a couple more. What about this? I don't know. This kind of interests me. Do you have kids that kind of turn virtual class into show and tell, like with pets or with different things? I know the other day, one of the teachers in our district actually had to bring your pet to school to virtual class day, and the kids got to kind of show off their pets, but that was a planned event. So do you have that maybe as an unplanned event where it turns into like a disruption?
Not a disruption per se. Like I kind of just mention it and then keep moving, just to I keep morale. Well, I try to keep morale pretty high. There was one time one of my students, and she's great. She's like one of the top students. She's in there. She's like baking or something. Like she has her camera back there and she's paying attention too, and she's like, right, and then her family's coming, so she's like showing me the goods that she makes. It's like these little cups and jars and stuff, she's like, "Oh, here I had this, and I had this kind, this kind, this kind." And then the same student, she said, "My mom brought me this from overseas, or like Belize, or something like that. A huge like shell, like she's showing us that, and then uh, like some of them showing like their stuffed animals and stuff. And these are high school kids, you know, like." And I just said, "Hey, they do that from time to time, and sometimes I'll mention things just to, you know, keep the mood light and whatever. Because
Mhm.
the kids, they find that entertaining. So if they see something and a kid is showing something, I'm like, let's roll with it,
Yeah.
as long as it didn't take too much time because we don't have enough time already. So
Right. Well, go ahead, Lamont.
Well, I was gonna say that I very early on when we first started the virtual learning, um, the first Google Meet that we did, it was just kind of like, "Hey, how are you? Are you safe? Like, what's going on? Like, da da da." There wasn't really a lesson per se. It was just kind of checking in on the kids and them checking on us and whatever. But um, there was this one kid, he just kind and like there was no time frame for the Google Meet, right? It was just like, hey, here we're gonna start here, and he just kind of lingered the whole time, and like never. Like I mean, kids are coming in and out because like it's the first meet, whatever. He stayed, and I didn't want to tell him like, okay, I gotta go now. Two and a
yeah,
half hours later, he
Wow.
has showed me his horses, his goats, his chickens, his dad's truck, his action figure. Like I got a full tour of like the entire property and of like everything. Even when he went out to show me the horses, he's like, "Do you want to see my or sit?" I'm like, "Hey, you're breaking up, man. I think you're walking too far away from the router. You should probably go back." And he's like, and he's still just talking away.
That's funny. But, that's something to point out because we've talked a lot in the past episodes about culture and building online culture, and that is a way to do it. I mean, you have to let them have that opportunity to share their lives with you, because really, if you think about it, I mean, you are coming into their home in a way, and they're coming into yours. So
Yeah.
it's got to be personal. It's got to be personal. Was that too teachery?
right. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so the last one that we're going to talk about is this, and we kind of mentioned it, but is there have you, because we talked about like pets and objects, what about people? Like, do you have students who maybe like bring family members in to join into the class or
Yes.
anything like that? So what's
Well,
happening?
I've experienced, like, I guess, like, parents or people in the house, they're still like kind of fascinated by this whole thing,
Mm-hmm.
and so they'll walk in the back and they'll stop and they're like, and like, and the parents, a lot of the parents, they know me, so they'll like wave, or a little brother and sister come and they'll get up there, and I interact with them, and I'm like, hello, I'll wave at them. And, I think it makes the people who are on the, like, in the house feel a bit better, like the student,
Mm-hmm.
like they're not distracting. They're just part of my family, and,
Mm-hmm.
not making them feel weird, because the people who have the people in the background probably feel the most awkward, because you try to, not have anybody disrupt, and you don't want anybody to, disrupt the class and stuff like that. But I think whenever we were like, hey, how's it going? And keep it light,
Mm-hmm.
it puts the person at ease. Like, okay, well, this is not so bad. They know my family's here and stuff like that. But I
Right.
have had parents, I've had brother and sister, and then one time, like one of my students, she said, "Today's my mom's birthday." I'm like, "Go get her." So she went and got her mom, and whenever she was going to get her mom, I said, "Okay, so we're gonna sing happy birthday to her. Unmute yourselves right now." And then she got back on the thing. She's like, "Hello." I'm like, "Hello, we heard it's your birthday," and then we all sang to her.
That's
There you
good.
go.
See,
So
that's
she
awesome.
thought that was special. So
Yeah.
that was a special guest that we had.
Well, and that's like that same student who gave me the whole tour. Like at one point, he's like, "And this is my baby sister. She's only 3 months old." And it's like, I'm like, "Oh goodness. Okay, thank you. Maybe you should put her down. Thank you very much for showing me her."
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, I think if anything, the things we've talked about today is kind of, because my guess is that all teachers are encountering these kinds of kids, you know, these situations, and it's easy to get frustrated about them. It's easy to let yourself go like, this is messing up the lesson or whatever, but this is a perfect opportunity to build culture, and it's a perfect opportunity to show them that we're all in this together, you know, not to quote High School Musical, but
Virtual culture.
right. So that's it. And so
Don't stress about it.
right, you got to
Roll
embrace
with
the
it.
moment. You got to embrace the moment. So all right, any parting words?
All right. No.
Well, you know what they say.
Oh gosh. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in today. And we will see you next time.